Week 10 Fantasy Football Waiver Wire Pickup Edition. Players that are owned in 50% or less of fantasy football leagues for you to pick up and add to your team right away. Another week with 6 teams on the bye. A lot of players add drop this week. It's like Christmas every time you go back to the waiver wire. Again, I usually start off with a couple guys, sometimes one, sometimes two, that are owned at a little bit more than 50%, but guys you want to keep an eye on and an eye out for. The first guy is a guy I mentioned a few weeks ago. He's still on suspension. Josh Gordon, wide receiver, Cleveland Browns. He's now up to 65% owned. This guy potentially is a top 5 wide receiver, at very least a top 10 wide receiver 1. A guy you want to add right now if you have the roster space and just ride it out. He comes back week 12 versus Atlanta. 47% owned. Tight end Charles Clay, Miami Dolphins. More of a tight end 2, maybe a low end tight end 1. But the reason why I mention this, bye week. Rob Gronkowski on the bye. Dwayne Allen, Antonio Gates, Jordan Reed, all these guys are on the bye. If you're like me, in most situations, you only carry 1 tight end on your roster. Clay is a good plug and play, as I like to say. Fill in this week for one of those guys, or if you've just been decimated by injuries, maybe roll with him going forward. 44% owned, a consensus top 3 to 5 pick this year. Listen, I'm not going to get into the morality or the choices that Adrian Peterson has made, but I will say that he reached a plea agreement. Not sure if he's coming back. If you can add this guy, do it. If you can stash him and ride it out just to see what's going to happen. I mean, listen, this is a top 3. Again, him and Josh Gordon both. Top 5 at their position at the very least. If they get plugged back into the lineup, worth a stash if you got the room. 43% owned, Martavis Bryant. Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver. The last 3 weeks, this guy has come on strong. 22 targets, 10 catches, 167 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Listen, bottom line is those touchdowns are not sustainable. He's starting to slowly creep ahead of Marcus Wheaton on the depth chart. I'll take the number 2 in Pittsburgh the rest of the year. Definitely worth an add on your roster. At this point, play him, bye weeks, ride the lightning, see what happens. Real quick, not going to beat up the point. I talked about this guy last week. Charles Sims, running back, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, now 26% owned. Listen, if you're in a PPR format, a dynasty league, keeper league, this is a guy I would definitely add to your roster. I can't say I would start him at this point. There's a lot of uncertainty in Tampa, and the bottom line is, honestly, they haven't run the ball that well all year long. But listen, Sims is worth a flyer. Another uncertain running back situation, Cleveland Browns, Terrance West, 25% owned. This guy was left for dead a few weeks ago. He was inactive, a healthy scratch a couple weeks ago. He out-touched Ben Tate this week, 16-14. Not sure if I want anything to do with the running back situation in Cleveland. It's very similar to the running back situation in St. Louis. A lot of uncertainty. But again, if you got the roster space, add West. It's a running back by committee, but ride it out. See if he emerges as the lead guy. 7% owned, Mark Sanchez, quarterback, Philadelphia Eagles. For sure, if you're a Nick Foles owner, you definitely want to add Sanchez. At this point, it sounds like Foles is at minimum 6 weeks, possibly even longer, looking like a 6 to 8 week injury for Foles. From a fantasy standpoint, don't hold on to Foles. He's not worth the roster spot. If you need a quarterback, Sanchez to me is the guy. In Chip Kelly's offense, I don't see much of a drop-off because, to be honest, Foles has been fairly inconsistent this year. Less important about adding Sanchez, more important, feel free to drop Nick Foles and find somebody else out there. As always, don't forget to check back Thursday. Mason and I will be doing our NFL Week 10 winners and losers prediction show. So check the links in the description box. I have previous week's videos with plenty of other players that you should already be adding to your fantasy team. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.